Greetings and welcome to another installment from the Patchwork Productionz Learn to Crochet for Beginners series. In this video, you will learn how to make a granny square. For those of you who are new to my channel, my name is Stitch, and Patchwork Productionz is all about learning and doing crochet. So make sure you subscribe so you never miss another installment. Without further ado, let's get started. So for this tutorial series, I'll be using some medium worsted weight yarn or weight 4 yarn, and I will be using a US J10 or 5.75 millimeter sized hook. And for this tutorial, we'll be learning how to make the granny square, as it's typically called. It's also just a square made in the round, and it's the traditional old-fashioned style. As you can see by all these holes, it's not, say, a solid square. I may do another tutorial on that, but this is just the old-fashioned style granny square. And this is our first project made in the round. Now, if you haven't seen the previous tutorial videos, I would encourage you to check those out. I'll have a link in the description box. But in the last video for this series, we learned about increasing and decreasing, and this is going to use that quite a bit to get its size and shape, but also we'll have a few other examples of how increasing in the round can get a few other shapes aside from just a square. But without further ado, let us begin. So to make this square, we are working in the round, and so we're not going to have a foundation chain that's long or anything. It's pretty simple. And what we're going to do is make a foundation chain of 4 chains. So 1, 2, 3, 4. And now we're going to use a slip stitch to join this into a ring. So the 4th chain from the hook, which is the first chain you made, you're going to work into it, and you don't have to work into the bump. You can work into just this loop, both loops. It really doesn't matter, but you're going to work a slip stitch. So I'm going to insert my hook, draw a loop, and it's a slip stitch, so draw straight through. And now we have joined our chain to make a little ring. And this is just one of the many ways that you can start working in the round by making a foundation loop or chain ring. I'm sure it goes by a few different names, but basically joining a chain with a slip stitch so that you have a loop. And now we're going to chain 3 because the granny square is worked with double crochets. Double crochet being the US terminology. So we're going to chain 3, and for the granny square, the chain 3 counts as a double crochet, and that's how it will be through the remainder of the square. Now we're going to be working our double crochets in the loop. So if you pay close attention, you made this loop here, and there's going to be a hole in the middle, and then there's going to be the chains around the side. We're going to work our double crochets into the center. So we're just going to make a double crochet right through here. We're not going to go through any particular chain. And so we're going to make a double crochet and make another double crochet. And so this would make one side of our square. And so if you look here, if I can find where my chain is, right here. So this is basically what we've made right here, this piece right here. And as you can see, it defines one side of our square. And so now we're going to chain 2. 1, 2. This chain 2 is going to define our corner, which is the large spaces that you see going diagonally in our square. Those are the corners that other stitches are then worked into. Now we're going to make 3 more double crochets. 1, 2, whoops, go, and 3. This is going to make the next side of our square. And what I like to do, because I know that it's a side and that I'm going to have to fit more stitches in here, I just kind of grab all of those double crochets and pull them closer to the previous set. So now you can already sort of see that it's making a little edge there. Now if it kind of looks more rounded to you, don't worry. As you build it out, it will gain its shape. But for now, mine is looking like a square already. And so we will now chain 2. So as you can see here, there's a pattern. 3 double crochets, chain 2, 3 double crochets, chain 2. And we're going to continue this trend. We're going to make 3 more double crochets. 1, get some extra yarn. 2, 3, and so now this is the next side, and we're going to just pull that, chain 2, and now we're going to do this again, 3 double crochets in the chain ring. So as you can see here, we've worked all of our double crochets in the center of the chain ring. We did 3 double crochets, 2 chains, 3 double crochets, 2 chains, and so on. So we've got our square shape here, and this is, you could consider, the first round of our square. When working in the round, just like when we had the rows, you would have row 1, turning chain, row 2, turning chain, etc. We would consider this round 1. So to actually complete round 1, we need our corner here, so we're going to chain 2, and we're going to slip stitch into the top chain that we made, that chain 3 that we made in the beginning. We're going to find the top chain, which if you look here, we have 1, 2, 3, and then that third chain we're going to make a slip stitch. Now I have my chain right here kind of tight, which kind of makes it a little hard, but not terribly hard. So just try to chain that loosely, because you will have to work back into it. And remember, a slip stitch is just inserting the hook into the loop, drawing a loop, and drawing it through the loop that's on your hook as well. And so there we have a slip stitch, and the chains in the corner don't need to be as loose, although it is good practice to chain loosely. In the case of a square, I actually do those not quite as loose, because I know I won't be working back into them, and because it just makes the corners look a little nicer to me. But if you chain loosely, it won't change anything at all. And so here we have officially completed round 1 of our square, and you can see already that it sort of looks like a square, just, smaller. Now, typically what you would do now is you would cut your yarn, you take your scissors, cut your yarn and you would then start a new one. I'm going to show you that in a second, but if you want to cheat, which is what I did here, with this one, I did not cut my yarn until the very end. And here's how you do that. When you're dealing with the granny square, you always want to start your next round in one of the spaces. In this case, we only have corner spaces. Now, you can't do that from where we fastened off. You'd have to go across the row. I'm sure there are other ways of doing this. I haven't seen them, but cutting the rope and fastening onto the corner and beginning again is the typical way you do it, especially since if you're going to change colors, you would have to fasten off anyway. So that's the way I'm going to do, but I'm going to show you a way that you can do it without fastening off, which is basically you're going to turn your work, turn your work, and you're going to, it's going to be a little tricky, but you're going to make a slip stitch in that corner right there. So just put your hook, yarn over, and there. It's a little interesting, but it works. And so now we've kind of turned around. It's a little bulky. I'm sure there's a neater way of doing that. But then we can chain 3 and begin again. It's not as nice, but it's possible. But let's just do it the right way. I'll do it the way you would normally do it, so I can teach you properly. So we're gonna cut our yarn, fasten off, and so now we can begin the next round. To join our work, we're going to join with a slip stitch. So first we're going to make our slip knot like normal. So this is how we normally do it, but let's enlarge our loop. We're going to insert our hook through that little space, then put our yarn on, and now that it's through here, we have the working end here and then our slip knot loop over here. We're going to make our chains. 1, 2, 3. So that's one way of doing it. The other way is joining with a slip knot. So I have the loop on my hook already. I insert my hook, draw a loop, so I have 2 loops on the hook, and then I'm going to draw through that loop on there and pull, and I've joined with a slip knot. So now I can chain 3 here as well. So you can do it either way you want. I'm going to do this round this way, and the next round I'll do it the other way so that you can see both demonstrations. But this is joining with the slip knot. I'll do it again just so that you can see and remember. Make my knot again. This is joining with the slip stitch. So we're going to insert our hook into this corner space. See, there's the 4 corners. We're going to insert it into this space. We're going to yarn over and draw a loop. So now we have 2 loops, the drawn loop and the slip knot loop that we had. And we're going to draw through to make a slip stitch, and there. We have joined the yarn to the work, and now we can chain 3 to begin row 2, or round 2. I keep saying row. Okay, so again, this chain 3 is going to count as a half double crochet. So to work in the corner, we're going to make 2 more half double crochets, or double crochets. Oh my, I've got my stitches all jumbled up. So we have 1, or 2 double crochets. Now we're going to make another double crochet. So we have 3 double crochets including that chain 3. And now we're going to chain 2 and make 3 more double crochets into that same corner space. 1, 2, 3. And so this makes the new corner, so that in the next round we can work into this to make this same corner again, and that's how we can grow in size. You see this corner has 3 or 6 double crochets in that space here. That's why we chained 2 there, so we can work into that chain 2 and be able to keep progressing. Now, this is where things get fun. We're now going to chain 1. And now we're going to make this corner thing in here again. So we've chained 1, and now we're going to make a double crochet in the corner space. And another. Get some more yarn. And a third double crochet. We're going to chain 2, 1, 2, and we're going to make 3 more double crochets in that chain 2 space from round 1. So if you can see here, there's a pattern, and I'll just outline the pattern for you. The corners always have 2 chains, and that's so that you can work 6 double crochets into them each round, so that you can grow the size of the project, of the square. And everywhere that there is, that's not a corner, where there's 3 double crochets at the round below, the one that you're working on, you're going to chain 1. And so over here, below us is 3 double crochets, and we just finished this corner. There's nothing else but this corner to work into afterwards, so we're going to chain 1 here. So this is the pattern to grow the size of your square. You don't actually have to work into these stitches. That's something I kind of like about the granny square. You don't actually have to work into the stitches for this style of square. I think for some of the solid style squares you do have to work into the stitches, but this chaining allows us to get these holes that we see here, so it's a different way of making a square, but it's a very common way of making a square. So now we've chained 1 here, we're going to make 6 double crochets in this corner once again. And it's just an ever repeating pattern that you do to grow the size of the square. Chain 2. And make 3 more double crochets. And so here, there's another 3 double crochets, and then this next corner. So to get to that next corner, we're going to chain 1, and then we're going to make 3 double crochets, 2 chains, and 3 double crochets in that order in the chain 2 space from the round below. So here we have 3 double crochets. We're going to chain 2, and then we're going to make 3 more double crochets. If you have to shift the stitches around, sometimes what I'll do is I'll just grab them and pull them, so I have more room to make the next double crochet. Sometimes I have to, sometimes I don't have to, it all depends. And so now this is the last gap that we have to fill. There's 3 double crochets down in the row below. So we're going to chain 1, and now we're at the beginning of this round again, and so we're going to slip stitch into the top chain of that chain 3. So we have 1, 2, 3, and so this third chain that's the top, we're going to work a slip stitch into it. And silly me, again, I made a tighter stitch than I might have wanted to. But there we go. Slip. And we're in. So this is the end of round 2. The end of round 2 for our square. Now this square appears to only be 3 rounds, and so I'll actually show you how to count the rounds. It's pretty convenient, these holes, because we can see the stitches more easily. So to count them, we know we have 2, so it's easy to demonstrate. These chain 3 is at the center. So let's say we don't count that space. Pretend that space isn't there for the purpose of counting. So we have chain 3, a space, and then these chain 3s. So we can count them in 2 ways. We can count the chain 3s, so we have 1, and it goes around, so we don't have to count the other 3. And then 2 for the corner. We could count it like that. We could count the spaces, and we still don't have to count the center, because there's 1, that's the 1 corner space, 2, that's the corner space that no stitch has been worked into. So just see closely, 1 space, 2 space, and we know that that's 2 rows, or we have 1 set of stitches and another set of stitches going diagonally. That might be a little trickier if you accidentally count this or something, but there are a few ways that you can count this. So for this, for example, we know we have 3 because if we have the center, so we don't count it, and then we have 1, 2, 3 for the corner spaces, or we have the center and then the 3 stitches. We have 1, 2, 3. So it's a few ways to count them. The spaces make it pretty easy to be able to determine the row. You could have the round. We could have a round marker, but we don't have to in this case. To do round 3, we're going to fasten off and we're going to begin in the corner, and I'm going to show you the other way to join the yarn. So loosen that a little. We're going to insert the hook. Now put our yarn on, and let me just untangle this ball here. There we go. And so we have our hook in the loop, the chain 2 loop. We have our slip knot and the loop on the hook. We're going to pull it through, so we have the working end going through this loop. And now we're just going to chain 3. 1, 2, 3. And so it's joined. You could say it's more like a stitch now, but that's just another way of doing that. Let me show you up close so that you can see. So I have, let me just pull that tail end so you can see. The working end is going through the loop, and then I have the loop on the hook. So then right from here I can just do my chain 3. And you can see that it's attached. So this is just another way of attaching your yarn to your next piece of work, your next project. next round in this case. So now we're going to begin round 3 making some double crochets. Again, this chain counts as a double crochet. So right here we have 3 double crochets. 1, 2, and then our turning chain. So that's 3. We're going to chain 2, 1, 2, and we're going to work 3 more double crochets into this chain 2 loop corner from round 2. So there we have it. Next corner, the first corner from round 3, it's just been made. And you can see here, in a way, we increase in the little loops in order to get the shape, the size of this square. So that's why increasing is an important technique to learn for shaping. If you haven't seen that tutorial, I'd encourage you to watch that one. But it allows us to add stitches to make a new shape. And as you can see here, we did a chaining increase. So we have an increase where we added 3 double crochets here, and then an increase where we added a chain. So even though it's not a stitch per se in the sense of like a single crochet or a double crochet, it adds stitches or chains that we now have to work into on the next row, therefore adding stitches round after round. Excuse me, I keep saying row. We're working in the round, and so round after round we're adding stitches. And so now, remember, every time we see 3 double crochets from the previous round, we are going to chain 1. And so that's exactly what we're going to do here. But now, unlike with round 1 and round 2, we're not going to immediately work into our corner. There's this chain 1 space from the previous round where we chained 1 because there were 3 double crochets. And now what we're going to do is treat this like that corner in the sense that we are going to double crochet 3 double crochets into that chain space. Now, not into the chain space. So we're just going to go straight through here where my finger is. So demonstrate, right through that hole is where we're going to go into, and we're going to make our double crochets, 3 of them. And that's what you do when you're making the traditional old-fashioned granny square. This is the pattern you follow, because now we have 3 double crochets that was from that corner, and we're going to do the same thing. Chain 1, because we have 3 double crochets in the round below us. And now we're going to work our corner, 3 double crochets, chain 2, and 3 double crochets. So we made 3 double crochets. We're going to chain 2, 1, 2, and now we're going to make 3 more double crochets, all in this chain 2 space. So now our pattern repeats. 3 double crochets down here, so we're going to chain 1, a chain 1 space that we have here, so we're going to work 3 double crochets in the chain 1 space. 1, 2, 3. 3 double crochets, so we're going to chain 1. And now our corner, so we're going to do 3 double crochet, chain 2, and 3 double crochet. So we have 3 double crochets here, so we're going to chain 2, gonna make 3 more double crochets in the same chain 2 space from the previous round. And so now I'm just going to finish this following the same pattern. Chain 1 whenever there are 3 double crochets in the round below, 3 double crochet into a chain 1 space, and then in the corners where there's the 2 chains, we're going to work 3 double crochets, 2 chains, and then 3 double crochets into that chain 2 space from the previous row or round, and this all makes our corner. Finish this. And that's how it's done. This is how we make the granny square. It's fairly simple, pretty easy to make. You can work up several of these relatively quickly, although I will say as you go up in rounds, the more rounds you make, the time it takes to go around each round and make it kind of goes up, not quite exponentially, but by a great degree. So just be aware of that. If you're making a very, very large granny square, it may take some time. So now we're at that last step, a space here. And remember, this is something you really don't want to forget, and you may notice it. If you do forget it, you may not, and it could be problematic. So right here, I've made this mistake before, where I'm like, oh, I'm done, and now I just make my slip stitch right here, but I'm not done. The step that I've forgotten is chaining 1. There's 3 double crochets in the round below. So I want to chain 1, and now I can go ahead into the top of my chain 3 and make a slip stitch. Forgetting that can be a problem once you move to the next round and end up back there and realize that there is no space to work into for your 3 double crochet, because if I were to go on to round 4, right in this space I would need to work 3 double crochets. But when I've just slip stitched there, this is going to be my space. It's pretty much what it looks like. So that would be quite an issue. Now, I could fasten off and begin another round. I will say that you could begin a round in one of these spaces here. The principle is just that when you join it, you chain 3 and make 3 double crochet, or 2 double crochet, 3 total including the turning chain, in this space. So if I wanted to, I could fasten off, join with a slip stitch right here, and chain 3, and then make a double crochet, make a double crochet, and I'd have my 3 double crochet in this space here, and then I could just proceed around. I could do that, or I could just stay by joining it into the corner. Either way works. Just quickly, because I have not, I will demonstrate again how I could just move on without fastening off. You would just turn your work here, and it's a little cumbersome, but it's doable. Let me just make my loop a little smaller, and I would just make a slip knot or slip stitch right there. And so now I could chain 3, and I didn't have to fasten off, and I could just begin my this would be the 4th round. 1, 2, So this would be my 3 double crochets. That includes my turning chain. And so now I can just chain 1 and carry on. I'm not going to carry on because I'm not going to go into a 4th round, but that's how you would go about doing that in the chance that you do not want to fasten off. But if you're changing colors, you definitely need to fasten off and join your other color. And I'll have a tutorial series about changing colors later, so make sure you subscribe so that you can be notified when I put out that video. Now, the granny square is an amazing crochet piece of work. It is, I would say, the foundation of many things in terms of it's so versatile. Sadly, I actually did not learn this when I was beginning crochet. I actually only recently heard about this, and I was quite shocked that I had failed to learn something like this, partially because of the way that I chose to go about learning crochet. Just a word of advice to anyone who is learning how to crochet: be sure to look for as many resources that can teach you as possible. My mom actually bought me a book with many different stitches that I could learn stitch patterns for crochet, and I failed to realize that at the back of that book they actually had instructions on how to make this. If I had known how to make this sooner, I could have made plenty more things than what I just knew how to make, which wasn't much other than just hats. This can be used for just about anything. Like almost anything you could think of, a granny square could be used to make it. If I'm making, let's say, a pot mat, I could get some cotton yarn, use a granny square, and just make it a little larger than this. I could use a solid square if I wanted to not have these holes, or I could just use this, so that works for that. If I'm making a blanket, all I have to do is make a bunch of granny squares, and I could even leave them this size and just make more of them and then join them together. We're also going to have a tutorial on joining. So I could do that and make a large blanket or a baby blanket. If I wanted to make a sweater, I could even use granny squares to join them together to make a sweater. I've even seen people use granny squares to make slippers. I did not know that was possible, but apparently you can do that. Maybe a cushion cover. Just about anything you could think of making, you can use a granny square or any kind of shaping like this to make it, which is very fascinating. I'll have some tutorials on various ways you can use the granny square to make things, but it's something fundamental to learn. It's a great way to practice. It is worked in the round, but does make a square shape. Now, this is just one shape you can make, and one way you can make this shape. There is a solid square where you would still have these corner spaces, but you wouldn't have these other spaces. Those would all be filled in with just double crochets if you're using double crochets. I think you could use treble for this. You could probably use half double. I don't know what this would look like with a single crochet. That would be pretty interesting to find out. But other shapes that you can make, if I can just get them over here, I made a small one. I didn't want to go through too much time, but if you can, let me move this so there's more contrast. If you can see this right now, you can sort of tell that it looks like a hexagon. I can try to stretch it out so you can see there are 6 corners here. And this is basically made the same way that we made this granny square, in the sense that I double crocheted 3, except instead of doing it 4 times, I did it 6 times. And this little corner is made the same way as well. 2 chains, and I would work into those chains on the next round. This is also worked in the round. And so this is a hexagon. So just with the granny square, I could make all sorts of things with the hexagons. Just make them, join them together, and I could make all sorts of interesting things. Then we also have what is more traditionally used in the round, which is a circle. And this, there's two different ways to do it in the round. You could do it like this, which is basically you make, I think I have, what was it? I think 12, or was it 16 double crochets worked into the ring chain, the chain ring. And then I joined with a slip stitch and chained 3 and then made the next round. So that's how this is made. Or you could do a spiral, which I'll cover in another video. But the spiral, you would just keep going and going and going. There is no joining with a slip knot and chaining 3. You just, when you get to the next one, you just go right over it. And I'll do a tutorial on that so you can understand that. But this is just made by making your stitches, joining, and making more stitches. Now, something to understand when working in the round, and it works for anything. The square, you saw it. This hexagon, I only made one round, so it's small, but it would be the same principle. This circle has 2 rounds, and it's actually a little easier to demonstrate. Increasing is very important because when you're working in the round, you have to grow the size without having it warp, curl, or just go down. Because if I were to make, let's say, double crochets in all of these stitches, there are currently 32 stitches going around here. If I were to make double crochets, 32 stitches, and just keep going, this would eventually look like a little tube. Same for this square in a way. If I just made whatever count of stitches there are here, if I just kept doing that all the way around, it would eventually start to go down. You see, when you're working in the round, you have to increase stitches by a certain number so that it goes out and stays flat instead of getting warped because there's too many stitches here but too few stitches there, etc. Now, the reason I say it's easier to demonstrate with the circle is because I started with 16 double crochets here. But when I moved to round 2, excuse me, I added an extra stitch in every stitch that I had in the previous round. So that's why round 2 has 32. And now in the next round, that would be round 3 that I would do, I wouldn't add an extra stitch in every stitch. I would add an extra stitch in every other. So this first stitch would have 2 stitches in it, 2 double crochets worked into it. And the next one would have 1 double crochet worked into it. And the next stitch would have 2 double crochets worked into it. And the next stitch would have 1 double crochet worked into it, and so on. So it's pretty critical that we increase when working in the round so that our project stays flat and gets larger. I'll have a full tutorial on working in the round in the near future. So again, be sure to subscribe, ring the notification bell so you'll be notified when that video comes out. But this is different things you can do working in the round, and this is how we make the basic, simple, easy, enjoyable granny square. It's very popular. There are so many things you can do with this, so be sure to explore all your options. And again, I'll have videos with different ideas that you can use granny squares for. So after all this is the end of this tutorial video. Thank you for watching this video. If you enjoyed this tutorial and want to learn more about crochet, be sure to hit the subscribe button and ring the notification bell so you never miss another video. Don't forget to give this video a big thumbs up, and also share this video with your friends and family or on social media. And feel free to leave a comment down below. If you have any questions or suggestions or any feedback, I'd love to hear from you. Until next time, catch you later.